What if I told you that for the past 40 years, aliens have been stealing our dreams, rewriting our stories and turning humanity into actors in someone else's script? What if the perfect alien civilization we've always imagined meeting was actually our worst nightmare? Stay with me because what Captain Elira Voss discovered in the void between stars will change everything you thought you knew about first contact. Captain Elira Voss didn't believe in nostalgia. She believed in deep space physics, quantum mechanics, and the cold mathematics that kept her crew alive in the void between stars. But what they received that Tuesday morning wasn't data. It was a transmission wrapped in dreams. The Raven Star had been drifting through the Kepler terminus for 3 weeks, scanning dead space for mineral deposits. Nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional meteor shower. Elira was reviewing fuel consumption reports when communications officer Chen nearly fell out of her chair. "Captain, you need to hear this." The bridge went silent. Through the speakers came something impossible. Static at first, like an old radio fighting through interference. Then music. Synthesized keyboards, drum machines, that unmistakable sound of the 1980s. But this wasn't some nostalgic Earth broadcast echoing through space. This was live. Signal origin. Elira's voice cut through the bridge atmosphere like a blade. "Unknown captain. But it's strong, stronger than anything we've recorded out here." The static faded. What came next made every crew member freeze in place. On the main screen, colors bloomed like watercolor paint bleeding through fabric. Neon pink, electric blue, golden yellow that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The image sharpened and they saw her. An alien woman, tall and graceful, strutting through what looked like downtown Los Angeles circa 1985. But this wasn't Earth. The buildings stretched impossibly high, their surfaces made of what appeared to be crystallized light. Palm trees swayed in winds that carried glittering particles instead of dust. The woman's skin had a subtle iridescent quality, shifting between silver and deep purple as she moved. She turned toward the camera, smiled, and spoke in perfect English with an accent that seemed to blend Valley Girl with something otherworldly. "Welcome back to Alien Girls, episode 21. I'm your host, Zara, broadcasting live from the Sunset Strip of Celluloid Prime." The crew exchanged glances. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Today, we're exploring human dreams of the perfect decade. The time when your species believed the future would be chrome and leather, when you thought love could be synthesized and packaged in 3-minute pop songs. Elira felt something cold crawl up her spine. This wasn't just entertainment. This was analysis, cultural dissection performed with surgical precision. But then came the voice that changed everything. "Captain," it was barely a whisper. Archivist Jonah Cade stood in the doorway, his face pale as moonlight. "That broadcast format, Super Panavision 70, color saturation algorithms, audio compression ratios." His voice cracked. "Captain, that technology hasn't existed for 300 years. The alien woman on screen continued her monologue, describing human fashion trends and social behaviors with the detached fascination of a scientist studying lab specimens. But her smile never faltered, and her eyes, those strange, shifting eyes, seemed to look directly through the screen at each member of the crew. "How is this possible?" Chen's voice trembled. Jonah stepped onto the bridge, his tablet clutched against his chest like a shield. "It's not just the format, Captain. The signal strength, the quantum coherence. This isn't a recording. This is a live broadcast using technology we've forgotten how to build." Elira stared at the screen. The alien woman Zara was now walking through what appeared to be a shopping mall. But instead of stores, each storefront displayed different scenes from human history. The Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the space race. All rendered in that same hyper-saturated nostalgic aesthetic. Source location Chen, now. "Working on it, Captain. The signals bouncing off quantum resonance fields. It's like trying to track a ghost that keeps changing which dimension it's haunting." On screen, Zara stopped in front of a storefront labeled Dreams Deferred. Inside, Elira saw images that made her breath catch. Children building cardboard spaceships. Teenagers writing science fiction stories by flashlight under bed covers. Adults staring at stars and wondering what might be looking back. "Your species has such beautiful dreams," Zara said, her voice somehow both warm and clinical. "Such magnificent, unrealized potential. We've been watching, collecting, preserving what you've forgotten. The transmission flickered. For just a moment, the perfect 1980s aesthetic cracked, revealing something underneath. Massive structures, technology beyond human comprehension. And in the background, barely visible, other figures moving with purpose and intelligence that made Elira's strategic mind race with implications. Then the perfect image returned. Zara smiled again, but this time there was something different in her expression. Something that looked almost like pity. Next week, we'll be exploring human concepts of heroism, the stories you tell yourselves about who you might become. She paused, and Elira could swear those shifting eyes focused directly on her. Until then, keep dreaming, little Earth. We're listening. The transmission cut to static. The bridge remained silent for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Finally, Chen spoke. Captain, I've got a fix on the source. We're Sector 7G, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. But Captain, she hesitated. According to our star charts, there's nothing there. Empty space. Elira looked at this blank screen where impossible colors had painted impossible dreams just moments before. In her 20 years of deep space exploration, she'd encountered phenomena that challenged human understanding. Quantum storms that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Crystalline entities that communicated through gravitational waves. But this felt different. This felt personal. Jonah, full analysis of that broadcast. Every frame, every audio sample, every piece of metadata you can extract. Yes, Captain. Chen, plot a course for Sector 7G. Captain, that's a 3-day journey, and we're already behind schedule for the mining survey. Elira turned to face her crew. These were good people, rational people, people who trusted her judgment even when that judgment led them into the unknown. Whatever just transmitted to us has technology we lost centuries ago. They know about our culture in ways that suggest long-term observation, and they're broadcasting from a location that officially doesn't exist. She paused, letting the implications settle. I don't know about you, but I'm very interested in having a conversation with whoever's been watching us dream. 3 days of hyperspace travel felt like 3 years. The crew of the Raven Star moved through their routines with the mechanical precision of people trying not to think about what they might find at the end of their journey. But Elira could see it in their eyes, the same questions that kept her awake during sleep cycles. Who was watching them, and for how long? Jonah's analysis had yielded more mysteries than answers. The broadcast signal contained layers of encryption that shouldn't exist, quantum compression algorithms that theoretical physicists had only dreamed about. And embedded in the audio track, barely detectable, were fragments of human conversations. Phone calls from 1987, radio chatter from the early space program, children's laughter from summer afternoons that happened before some of her crew were even born. Approaching Sector 7G, Captain, Chen announced, dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. Elira gripped her command chair. In 30 seconds, they would either find empty space and return home with an unsolved mystery, or they would discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. 20 seconds. The familiar hum of the hyperspace drives began to fade. 10 seconds. Elira held her breath. 5, 4, 3, 2. Transition complete. The view screen cleared, revealing normal space. Stars scattered across the cosmic backdrop like diamonds on black velvet. For a moment, Elira felt a mix of disappointment and relief. Then Chen's instruments started screaming. Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies. Something's here, but it's not showing up on visual. Full spectrum scan, every sensor we have. The ship's sensors reached out into the void, probing with electromagnetic radiation, graviton pulses, quantum field detectors. What they found defied every law of physics Elira thought she understood. Captain, Chen's voice was barely a whisper. You need to see this. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they weren't looking at empty space anymore. They were looking at something that shouldn't exist. It was massive beyond comprehension. A structure that seemed to stretch across light years, but somehow folded in on itself so that every angle revealed new impossible geometries. Crane arms reached into infinity, their surfaces gleaming with the same iridescent quality they'd seen in Zara's skin. Lighting rigs the size of moons cast beams that painted nebulae in colors that had no names. And floating through it all, microphones larger than space stations, their surfaces rippling with sound waves made visible. It was a film studio, a production facility built on a scale that made human engineering look like children's toys. My God, Jonah breathed. It's not just a studio, it's alive. He was right. The structure pulsed with organic rhythms. Cables that looked like neural networks carried information between massive processing nodes. What Elira had first taken for construction, scaffolding, was actually a skeletal system supporting organs she couldn't identify, performing functions she couldn't imagine. Captain, we're being hailed. The view screen shifted, and suddenly they were looking at an alien being that made Zara look almost human by comparison. Tall as three humans stacked vertically with skin that shifted between translucent and opaque like living glass. Four arms each ending in hands that seemed to manipulate reality itself rather than just physical objects. And eyes. So many eyes arranged in patterns that suggested a visual spectrum far beyond human perception. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that made the ship's hull resonate like a tuning fork. Welcome to Celluloid Prime Humans of the vessel Raven Star. I am Zyra Lux, Director of Cultural Preservation and Narrative Reconstruction. You have traveled far to find us. Elira stood slowly. First contact protocols scrolled through her mind, but none of them had prepared her for this. I'm Captain Elira Voss. We received your broadcast and came to investigate. Zyra Lux tilted her massive head, and several of her eyes focused on Elira with unsettling intensity. Investigate, such a beautifully human word, always seeking to understand rather than simply experiencing. Her voice carried what might have been amusement. You are not here to investigate, Captain Voss. You are here to audition. Audition for what? For the role of a lifetime, literally. Zyra gestured with one of her four arms, and the view screen filled with images that made Elira's heart race. Earth, but not the Earth she knew. This Earth gleamed with impossible architecture. Cities that reached into space itself. Oceans that reflected skies filled with aurora that never faded. And moving through it all, humans and aliens working together, creating art and music and stories that transcended any single species' imagination. This is what your world could become, Ira said. What it was always meant to become. But you forgot how to dream at the scale your potential demands. The images shifted, showing the Earth Elira actually knew. Gray cities choking under their own weight. Oceans slowly dying. Humans staring at screens instead of stars, consuming stories instead of creating them. So we preserved what you discarded. Every abandoned screenplay, every unfinished novel, every child's drawing of spaceships that would never flee. Zyra's voice grew softer, almost sad. We have been your archivist for centuries, Captain, collecting the dreams you threw away. Elira felt something cold and hard forming in her chest. You've been watching us, studying us, preparing you. There is a difference. Preparing us for what? Zyra, Lux smiled, and it was not a human expression. Too many teeth arranged in patterns that suggested purposes Elira didn't want to consider. For your close-up, of course. The screen changed again. This time they saw the interior of Celluloid Prime. Vast sound stages where alien beings directed human actors through scenes that looked familiar, yet wrong. Humans performing in stories that felt like Earth's history, but brighter, more dramatic, more perfect than reality had ever been. You see, Captain Earth forgot its story, lost the thread of its own narrative. So we wrote you back in. We cast new actors. We edited your history to reach its full dramatic potential. Elira's command training kicked in. Assess the threat, identify objectives, plan response. But how do you fight an enemy that thinks they're helping you? Those humans in your productions, where did they come from? Volunteers, Captain, people who chose narrative over existence, who preferred the perfect story to the imperfect life. You're kidnapping people. We're offering them immortality. Their stories will play forever, reaching audiences across the galaxy. Their performances will inspire civilizations that haven't even evolved yet. Zyra leaned closer to the screen, and her many eyes seemed to see directly into Elira's soul. Earth forgot how to be the hero of its own story, Captain Voss, but you haven't. You came here seeking answers. You led your crew into the unknown. You are exactly the kind of protagonist we need. The transmission flickered, and for a moment Elira saw something else. The true scale of celluloid prime. Not just a studio, but a weapon. A cultural virus spreading across the galaxy, turning entire civilizations into actors in someone else's script. We're not interested, Elira said firmly. Zyra's laugh was like crystal wind chimes in a hurricane. Captain, you misunderstand. You're not viewers anymore. You're not even visitors. Her smile widened impossibly. You're replacements, and the cameras are already rolling. The screen went dark. Emergency klaxons began blaring throughout the ship, and through the hull, Elira could hear something that chilled her to the bone, the sound of cosmic laughter. And beneath it, barely audible, the whisper of a director calling action. The Raven Star wasn't moving. That was the first thing Elira noticed when the emergency klaxons finally stopped screaming. They were locked in place by forces that registered on their instruments as gravitational fields, but felt more like invisible hands gently but firmly holding them in position. The second thing she noticed was that space outside looked different. The stars weren't quite where they should be, and the cosmic background radiation was shifting in patterns that looked almost like film grain. Chen report. All systems functional, Captain, but our engines aren't responding. It's like we're embedded in something solid, but sensors show clear space around us. Jonah was hunched over his workstation, fingers flying across holographic displays that showed readings that made no sense. Captain, I'm detecting massive reality fluctuations. The quantum substrate around our ship is being actively rewritten. In English, Jonah, they're editing us, Captain, in real time. Before Elira could ask what that meant, the ship lurched, not forward or backward, but sideways in a direction that didn't exist. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were seeing the Raven Star from the outside, as if cameras were positioned in the void around them. Multiple angles, close-ups, wide shots, a tracking shot that followed the curve of their hull with cinematic precision. We're inside their production, Elira whispered. The bridge shimmered, and suddenly it was bigger than it had been moments before. The lighting was more dramatic, casting shadows in places where shadows couldn't exist. Even the crew looked different, more heroic somehow. Their uniforms fit better. Their hair caught the light in ways that suggested the presence of invisible makeup artists. Captain Chen's voice sounded clearer, more resonant. I'm reading multiple ships approaching, but they're not showing up on our screens. Why not? Because they're behind us, and to the side of us, and below us. She paused, recalibrating her instruments. Captain, I think we're inside some kind of three-dimensional film set. The other ships are camera platforms. Elira felt reality twist around her like plastic wrap. The bridge was expanding again, giving the camera platforms better angles for dramatic shots. Her command chair was subtly repositioning itself to catch the light more favorably. Jonah, can you access their system? Find out what they're planning. I'm trying, Captain, but... He stopped staring at his console. Captain, look at this. On his screen, lines of text were appearing in real time. Not computer code, script dialogue. Captain Elira Voss. Jonah, can you access their system? Find out what they're planning. Archivist Jonah Ricade. I'm trying, Captain, but... He stopped staring at his console. Captain, look at this. The text continued, predicting their conversation before they spoke. Captain Elira Voss. That's impossible. How are they anticipating our words? Elira's blood turned to ice water. She opened her mouth to say exactly those words, then forced herself to stay silent. The text updated. Captain Elira Voss. Silent moment of realization, growing horror in her eyes. They're not predicting us, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're writing us. The text immediately reflected her actual words. Captain Elira Voss, they're not predicting us, they're writing us. Jonah's hands shook as he scrolled through more of the script. Captain, there are hundreds of pages here. Our entire mission, everything we've done, everything we're going to do. Show me. He transmitted the file to the main screen. Elira read her own future written in the clinical language of a screenplay, her crew's dialogue, their character arcs, their relationships. All of it mapped out with the precision of a master storyteller who knew exactly how the story would end. According to this, Chen said, reading over Elira's shoulder, I'm going to fall in love with Lieutenant Morrison from engineering. I don't have romantic feelings for Morrison, she protested. You will, Jonah said grimly. Look at page 47. The script detailed a scene where Chen and Morrison would be trapped together in a damaged shuttle bay, forced to work together to prevent catastrophic decompression. During the crisis, they would discover their mutual attraction and share their first kiss as the ship's hull sealed itself around them. This is insane, Chen said. I barely know Morrison. He's not even my type. The script says he becomes your type, Jonah replied. Character development through crisis. Classic romantic subplot structure. Elira scrolled further through the document. Her own character arc was laid out with surgical precision. The discovery of her grandmother's connection to the alien broadcast. Her growing understanding that humanity's dreams were being harvested and repackaged. Her ultimate choice between saving her crew or saving her species' narrative independence. But it was the final pages that made her hands clench into fists. Fade to black, the end of Season 1. Coming next season, Captain Voss joins the cast of Celluloid Prime as Director of Human Cultural Integration. Earth becomes a subsidiary studio of the Galactic Entertainment Complex. Humanity's stories are preserved forever, but humanity itself becomes a supporting cast in someone else's vision. They're planning a second season, Elira said, with us as the main characters. The ship lurched again, and suddenly they were moving, not through space, but through what looked like the corridors of an infinite studio complex. Sound stages stretched in all directions, each one containing different versions of reality. In one, she saw humans and aliens working together to build impossible cities. In another, she watched a love story between a human explorer and an alien princess that looked suspiciously like something from Earth's own romantic science fiction. Captain, Jonah's voice was tight with discovery and fear. I found something else in their system. Personnel files. What kind of personnel files? Missing persons from Earth. Hundreds of them. All listed as cast members in various productions. The names scrolled past on a screen. Scientists, artists, dreamers, people who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only mysteries and grieving families. They're not just watching our culture, Elira realized. They're stealing our people to perform in it. But then she saw a name that made her heart stop. Elira Voss, Status Lead Director, Human Authenticity Department, Project Alien Girls franchise. Jonah, pull up everything you can find on Elira Voss. His fingers flew across the interface. A file opened and Elira found herself staring at a photograph of a woman who looked exactly like her, but 30 years older. The same determined jaw, the same calculating eyes, the same stubborn set to her shoulders when facing impossible odds. Captain, Jonah's voice was very quiet. According to this file, Elira Voss was taken from Earth in 1987. She was a filmmaker, independent productions, mostly science fiction. Her last project was called Alien Girls. The universe tilted sideways. Elira gripped her command chair as memories that weren't quite memories flickered through her mind. A woman with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers telling bedtime stories about brave space captains and alien princesses. A voice saying, "Remember, Ellie, the best stories are the ones where everyone gets to be the hero." She was my grandmother, Elira whispered. The script on Jonah's screen updated itself. Captain Elira Voss. She was my grandmother. Archivist Jonah Cade. Captain, there's more. She's still here, still alive, and according to this, she's been asking for you. The main view screen flickered and suddenly they were looking at a vast cathedral made of film reels. Thousands of them stretching up into infinity, each one containing a different story, a different dream, a different possibility for what human culture could become. And standing in the center of it all, looking exactly like the woman from Elira's half-remembered childhood, was Elira Voss. She turned toward the camera and smiled with the same sad wisdom that Zyra Lux had shown them. "Hello, Ellie," she said, her voice carrying across impossible distances. "I've been waiting for you to join the production. We have so much work to do." The cathedral began to rotate around them, and Elira realized with growing horror that they weren't just being taken to meet her grandmother. They were being edited into the story she had spent 40 years creating, a story where humanity's greatest dreams came true, but only if they gave up the right to dream for themselves. The cathedral of film reels surrounded them like a temple built from crystallized dreams. Each reel pulsed with its own internal light, and Elira could hear whispers emanating from them. Fragments of conversations, bursts of laughter, the musical scores of movies that had never been made. The air itself seemed thick with narrative potential. Elira Voss stood at the center of it all, and seeing her face was like looking into a mirror that showed not just appearance but possibility. What Elira might become if she stayed. What she might have been if she'd been born in a different time, a different reality. Grandma Lena, the word escaped before Elira could stop it, carrying with it the voice of a 5-year-old girl who used to build blanket forts and pretend they were spaceships. Lena's smile was exactly as Elira remembered it from photographs that had sat on her mother's mantle. Warm, but with something sad lurking behind her eyes. The smile of someone who had gained everything they thought they wanted, only to discover the true cost. "You've grown up beautiful, Ellie, strong, just like I knew you would." Lena stepped closer, and Elira could see that her grandmother wasn't quite human anymore. Her skin had the same subtle, iridescent quality as the other aliens they'd encountered. Her eyes held depths that suggested she could see across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "You're supposed to be dead," Elira said. "You disappeared in 1987. My mother spent her whole life wondering what happened to you." "I was transformed, not destroyed." Lena gestured to the cathedral around them. "Every story I ever wanted to tell, I've been able to tell here. Every dream I ever had about what science fiction could become, I've been able to make real." Jonah was frantically scanning the chamber with his instruments, but Elira barely noticed. She was locked in a conversation that felt both like a reunion and an interrogation. "At what cost?" "Cost." Lena laughed, and the sound made several of the film reels spin faster. "Ellie, look around you. This is paradise for a storyteller. Unlimited resources, unlimited time, an audience that spans galaxies, and unlimited control over the people in your stories." Lena's expression flickered just for a moment. "The actors choose to be here. Do they? Or do you just edit their choices until they feel like choices?" Before Lena could answer, Jonah made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain," his voice was tight with excitement and horror, "there's a label here. On one of the reels." He pointed to a film canister that looked different from the others. Older, more worn. "It says deleted scene for Earth eyes only." Lena's face went very still. "Jonah, don't." But he was already activating the reel. Light erupted from it, forming a holographic projection that filled the air around them. And what they saw made Elira's understanding of everything shift like tectonic plates. Earth, but not as they knew it. This was Earth from 1987, vibrant and alive with possibility. Cities that gleamed with architectural innovation. Skies filled with ships that looked like the dreams of children made manifest. And in the center of it all, there was a woman directing the construction of a space elevator, while alien dignitaries watched with expressions of profound respect. The woman was Lena, but younger. Human. Completely human. "This was the real first contact," Lena said quietly. 1987. The year I was supposed to change everything. The projection continued. Elira watched her grandmother negotiate with alien ambassadors, sign treaties that would have transformed human civilization overnight, direct the filming of documentaries that would have prepared Earth for its entry into a galactic community. "What happened?" Elira whispered. "I made a choice." The projection shifted, showing Lena standing in a room very similar to the cathedral they were in now, but smaller, more human-scaled. "They offered me the chance to preserve human stories forever, to make sure that even if humanity never reached the stars, our dreams would. And you said yes." "I said yes." Lena's voice carried 40 years of regret. "I thought I was saving our culture. Instead, I trapped it." The projection changed again. Now they were seeing Earth as it actually developed it after 1987. Gray, polluted, humans staring at screens instead of stars, consuming stories instead of creating them. A species that had lost its way because the woman who was supposed to guide them into the galaxy had chosen preservation over progress. "Every human who's been taken since then has been my fault," Lena continued. "I created the template, The idea that humans could be improved through narrative management, that we could be made perfect if someone else just wrote our stories for us. Elira felt anger building in her chest, not just at the aliens who had orchestrated this, but at her grandmother who had enabled it. Millions of people lived smaller lives because of your choice. Yes. My mother grew up without her mother because of your choice. Yes. I grew up without knowing you because of your choice. Yes, Lena's voice broke slightly to us. And now you have the chance to make a different choice. The projection shifted one final time. Now they were seeing two possible futures for Earth. In one, Elira and her crew joined Celluloid Prime. Earth became a subsidiary studio, its people well cared for, but creatively managed. Humanity's stories would be preserved forever, polished to perfection, performed by actors who had been edited into loving their roles. In the other future, Earth remained independent, messy, imperfect. Many of its dreams would remain unrealized. Many of its stories would be forgotten, but they would be authentically human stories created by human choices, powered by human agency. The decision is yours, Ellie, but you need to understand what you're choosing between. I'm choosing between slavery and freedom. You're choosing between perfection and authenticity. Elira looked around the cathedral. In the distance, she could see other humans moving between the film reels. They looked happy, fulfilled. Their faces had the peaceful expressions of people who never had to worry about making the wrong choice because all their choices were being made for them. If you're staying here to find Earth Eyes only content to warn people about what's really happening, I need you to know something important. Jonah had been working frantically at his console during their conversation. Captain, this isn't just a preservation project. It's active cultural manipulation. He transmitted his findings to a nearby projection surface. Data streams showing Earth's entertainment industry, its news media, its social networks. All of them influenced by subtle transmissions from Celluloid Prime. They're not just collecting our stories, Jonah continued. They're shaping them. Every movie about aliens that portrays them as benevolent guides. Every story about humans who need to be saved from themselves. Every narrative that suggests we're better off when someone else is in charge. Cultural preparation, Elira breathed. If you're still watching this, Lena said, turning toward the projection, as if she could see through it to audiences on distant Earth. If somehow this deleted scene finds its way back to you, then you need to know the truth. She stepped closer to the projection, and her image became more vivid, more real. Subscribe to your own memory. Hold on to your own stories. Don't let anyone, no matter how wise they seem, edit your dreams to make them more palatable. The projection flickered, and for a moment Elira could swear she saw other humans scattered across the galaxy receiving the same message. Resistance, Stausitz. People who remembered what authentic human storytelling felt like. This isn't fiction, Lena continued. This is recovery. Recovery of the right to be imperfect, the right to fail, the right to create stories that don't make sense to anyone but ourselves. The projection began to fade, but Lena's voice carried clearly. The next scene begins now, and you get to decide who directs it. As the light died away, Elira found herself standing face to face with her grandmother in the present moment. Lena looked older now, tired in a way that suggested the weight of 40 years of accumulated choices. I can't undo what I've done, Lena said, but I can help you do what I should have done in 1987, which is choose the harder story, the one where humans get to be the heroes of their own narrative even if they're not very good at it yet. Elira looked at her crew. Chen, who was supposed to fall in love with Morrison, according to someone else's script. Jonah, whose character arc had been predetermined by alien writers who thought they understood human nature better than humans did. What do you need from us? Lena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I need you to help me delete the final scene, and then I need you to improvise a better ending. Deleting the final scene of a story that spanned 40 years and multiple star systems turned out to be surprisingly simple. It was just a matter of walking to the right film reel and pressing the right combination of alien controls that Lena had memorized decades ago. The hard part was what came after. Once we delete the ending they've written, Busto, Lena explained as she led them deeper into Celluloid Prime, we'll have approximately 17 minutes before their narrative stabilization protocols kick in and start writing a new one. 17 minutes to do what? Elira asked. to get you and your crew back to your ship, to broadcast the truth about this place to every human settlement in the galaxy, and to give Earth the choice I should have given them in '87. They moved through corridors that defied three-dimensional logic, passing sound stages where human actors performed in scenes that looked like idealized versions of Earth's history. The American Revolution, but with perfect weather and better costumes. The first moon landing, but with aliens cheering from the sidelines. World War II, but with a Hollywood ending where everyone went home happy. It's obscene, Chen muttered, watching a stage where actors performed the assassination of President Kennedy, except in this version he survived and went on to personally lead the first mission to Mars. It's what people want, Jonah said quietly. Look at their faces. He was right. The human actors looked genuinely happy. Their performances had the conviction of people who believed completely in the stories they were telling. They weren't just acting. They were living in a reality that had been edited to remove all the painful, messy, contradictory elements that made life difficult. The alien girls aren't just performers, Lena said, noticing their attention. They're cultural therapists. They take humans who have been damaged by reality and help them heal by giving them better stories to live in. Against their will. That's the question, isn't it? Lena stopped walking and turned to face her granddaughter. Is it against their will if they're happier afterward, if they prefer the edited version of their lives to the original? They had reached what Lena called the final edit room. It was smaller than the cathedral, but somehow felt more significant. The walls were lined with control panels that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their surfaces rippling with organic patterns that suggested neural networks operating at a scale beyond human comprehension. In the center of the room sat a single film reel larger than any they had seen before. It pulsed with light that seemed to synchronize with the heartbeats of everyone in the room. The master reel, Lena said. Every story ever told by every species in the galaxy eventually finds its way here. This is where they decide which narratives survive and which ones get edited into something more palatable. Elira approached the reel, and as she got closer, she could hear voices. Millions of them, billions. The accumulated stories of entire civilizations, all filtered through the editorial sensibilities of beings who believed they knew better than the original storytellers. How many species have they done this to? All of them. Every spacefaring civilization eventually gets the same offer we got. Join the galactic community, or set performers in a perfected version of your culture, or remain isolated and continue making your own messy, imperfect stories. And they all chose performance. All except one. Before Elira could ask which one, alarms began sounding throughout Celluloid Prime. Not the gentle chimes they'd been hearing, but harsh, discordant warnings that made the organic architecture around them convulse like a living thing in pain. They've noticed we're here, Lena said. Zyra Lux is coming. The walls of the final edit room became transparent, revealing the vast structure of Celluloid Prime around them. And moving through it with purpose that was both graceful and terrifying, Zyra Lux approached with an entourage of other beings that looked like living special effects. Captain Voss, Zyra's voice echoed through the chamber without any apparent source. You're not following the script. We're improvising, Elira called back. Improvisation is chaos. Chaos is suffering. We are here to eliminate suffering through superior storytelling. The chamber filled with images. Earth as it could be under Celluloid Prime management. Clean cities powered by technology that looked like magic. Humans and aliens working together on projects that span solar systems. Art and music and literature that combine the best impulses of dozens of species, societies into something greater than any single culture could achieve alone. Look what we're offering you, Zyra continued. Look what your species could become. But then Jonah did something unexpected. He connected his portable scanner to the master reel and began downloading its contents. Captain, he said, his voice tight with discovery, you need to see this. The images Zyra was projecting flickered and changed. Now they were seeing the other side of the galactic community, the species that had accepted Celluloid Prime's offer. And what Elira saw made her stomach clench with horror. They weren't thriving, they were museums, perfect static displays of what their cultures had been like at the moment they stopped growing. The beings who had once been innovative, creative, chaotic, and alive had become actors playing idealized versions of themselves for audiences who were also actors playing idealized versions of themselves. They're not creating anymore, Elira whispered. They're just performing. Performance is perfection, Zyra said, but there was something defensive in her tone now. Growth is uncertainty. Uncertainty is pain. Growth is life, Elira shot back. Pain is the price of being real. She moved toward the master reel, and as she got closer, it began to react to her presence. The surface became reflective, showing her not just her own face, but fragments of every choice she'd ever made. Every mistake, every triumph, every moment of doubt and determination that had led her to this place. If I touch this, what happens? You'll see every story, Lena said. Every real story before it gets edited, including yours. And if I change it, you'll give every species in the galaxy the choice between their original story and the improved version. Zyra Lux's voice became urgent. Captain, consider what you're about to destroy. We have eliminated war. We have ended suffering. We have created the perfect society. By eliminating choice. By eliminating bad choices. Elira placed her hand on the master reel and immediately understood why Zyra was so afraid. The reel didn't just contain stories. It contained the fundamental programming that determined what kinds of stories were allowed to exist. And right now, that programming prioritized harmony over growth, perfection over authenticity, performance over truth. But it didn't have to. She could feel the accumulated narrative weight of billions of civilizations flowing through her consciousness. Stories of species that had chosen the hard path, the uncertain path, the path that led through darkness toward light that might not even exist. And at the center of it all, she found the one species Lena had mentioned, the one that had refused Celluloid Prime's offer. They were called the Architects, and they had vanished from the galaxy 3 million years ago. But before they disappeared, they had left something behind. A single message encoded in the quantum structure of space itself. The best stories are the ones we write ourselves even when we don't know how they end. Elira gripped the master reel tighter and feeling its resistance. It didn't want to be changed. Change was chaos, and chaos was suffering, and suffering was the thing that Celluloid Prime existed to eliminate. But sometimes suffering was also growth. Sometimes chaos was creativity. Sometimes the story that hurt was the story that needed to be told. I'm giving everyone a choice, she said, addressing not just Zyra, but the entire galactic community that was watching through cameras they couldn't see. You can keep your perfect stories, but you can also choose to write new ones. She twisted the master reel, and reality twisted with it. Throughout Celluloid Prime, the organic architecture began to convulse, not in pain, but in something like relief. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy's master narrative editor was being edited itself. You don't understand what you're doing, Zyra said, her voice now edged with something that might have been panic. Without our guidance, they'll make mistakes. They'll suffer. They'll create stories that don't make sense. Yeah, Elira said, smiling as the master reel accepted her changes. It'll be beautiful. The chamber filled with light, and when it faded in, everything had changed. The master reel was still there, but it was no longer pulsing with the rhythmic certainty of predetermined outcomes. Instead, it shimmered with the chaotic potential of stories yet to be written. And across the galaxy, for the first time in eons, entire civilizations looked up at the stars and wondered what adventures they might choose for themselves. The changes rippled outward from the master reel like waves in a cosmic pond. Throughout Celluloid Prime, the organic architecture began to shift, reorganizing itself according to principles that prioritize possibility over perfection. The rigid sound stages became fluid spaces where multiple stories could exist simultaneously. The predetermined camera angles became suggestions rather than commands. And for the first time in 40 years, Elira Voss looked completely human again. The editing protocols are releasing their hold, she said, watching as her iridescent skin returned to normal flesh tones. I can feel my own thoughts again, separate from the narrative management systems. Zyra Lux stood frozen in the center of the chamber, her multiple eyes blinking in patterns that suggested rapid recalibration. When she spoke, her voice carried uncertainty for the first time. This is not how the story was supposed to end. That's the point, Elira said gently. From now on, nobody gets to decide how other people's stories are supposed to end. The master reel continued to transform its surface, now showing not predetermined outcomes, but probability clouds. Millions of potential futures spreading out like fractals, each one representing choices that had yet to be made. Captain Chen's voice came through their communication system. We're receiving transmission requests from across the galaxy, thousands of them, species we've never heard of, all asking the same question, which is, how do we write our own stories again? Elira smiled, feeling a weight she hadn't known she was carrying finally lift from her shoulders. Tell them to start with what they want to say, not what they think their audience wants to hear. The Raven Star was waiting for them when they emerged from Celluloid Prime, but the ship looked different now. Less polished, more authentic. The dramatic lighting had returned to normal. The camera angles had stopped trying to make everyone look heroic, but somehow they all looked more heroic anyway. Jonah began recording, Elira said as they settled onto the bridge. Full spectrum broadcast, maximum distribution range. This message needs to reach every human settlement in known space. Recording captain. Elira looked directly into the main camera, knowing that this moment would be preserved not by alien editors seeking to improve her words, but by human technology that would transmit them exactly as she spoke them. This is Captain Elira Voss of the deep space exploration vessel Raven Star. 3 days ago, we investigated a mysterious signal and discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We are not alone. We have never been alone. For decades, an alien civilization has been watching us, studying us, and in some cases, taking our people to perform in perfected versions of our own stories. The truth had a weight to it that made the bridge feel larger somehow. But here's what they didn't understand about humanity. We don't want perfect stories. We want true stories. We want the right to fail, to struggle, to make mistakes, and learn from them. We want the right to write our own endings, even when we don't know what those endings will be. Behind her, Jonah was monitoring the transmissions spread across the communication networks. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, mining stations in the asteroid belt, generation ships heading for distant stars. Everywhere humans had planted flags and dreams, this message was taking root. The entity that was managing our cultural development has agreed to a new arrangement. They will share their knowledge freely, but they will no longer edit our choices. They will offer guidance, but not control. They will help us preserve our stories, but they will not rewrite them. The communication board lit up with responses, some angry, some grateful, some confused, all of them authentically human. And to those who have been taken, who are living in the perfected versions of their lives within Celluloid Prime, I want you to know that you have a choice. You can stay in your edited paradise if it makes you happy, or you can come home and help us write the next chapter of human history. She looked at Lena, who was standing just outside the camera's range. Someone once told me that the best stories are the ones where everyone gets to be the hero. I think it's time we all started acting like heroes of our own stories. The transmission ended, but Elira kept talking, now addressing her crew directly. So here's what happens next. We return to Earth. We share everything we've learned. We help humanity navigate its introduction to the galactic community as equals, not as performers in someone else's vision. And if some people prefer the edited versions of their lives, Chenim asked, then that's their choice to make. The important thing is that it's actually their choice. Through the view screen, they could see Celluloid Prime beginning its own transformation. The rigid studio structure was becoming something more organic, more collaborative. Instead of a factory for perfected narratives, it was becoming a workshop where different species could experiment with storytelling together. Captain Jonah said, looking up from his instruments, I'm detecting something unusual. What kind of unusual? Communication signals. From Earth. But they're different from anything in our databases. He routed the signals to the main speakers, and what they heard made everyone on the bridge smile. Children's voices, teenagers, adults. All of them talking excitedly about the transmission they'd just received. But more than that, they were talking about their own stories, their own dreams, their own plans for what they might accomplish now that they knew the galaxy was full of possibilities. Listen to that, Lena said, her voice full of wonder. They're not asking for permission. They're not waiting for guidance. They're just starting. That's what humans do, Elira said. We start before we're ready. We begin before we know how things will end. We take the first step even when we can't see the path. The Raven Star turned toward home, but this time the journey felt different. Not like an ending, but like a beginning. Not like the completion of a mission, but like the start of an adventure that would involve the entire human species. Captain Chen said, "I'm receiving a personal message for you, audio only." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was familiar but transformed. Zara, the alien host from the original broadcast, but speaking now, without the artificial perfection of her previous persona. "Captain Voss, this is Zara of the Cultural Exchange Initiative, formerly of the Alien Girls broadcast series. I wanted to thank you for reminding us why stories matter. Not because they're perfect, but because they're ours." "What will you do now?" Elira asked. "We're going to try something new. Instead of improving other species' stories, we're going to collaborate with them. Help them tell their stories more effectively, but not change what those stories are." "And the humans who chose to stay?" "They're helping us design the new protocols. Turns out humans are exceptionally good at finding the balance between assistance and interference." The transmission ended and the Raven Star continued its journey home through space that no longer felt empty, but full of potential. "Final log entry for this mission," Elira said, speaking to the ship's recording system. "First contact with alien intelligence achieved. Cultural sovereignty preserved. Human agency restored. Mission status success with ongoing implications for the future of our species." She paused, thinking about how to end the record. "Personal note, my grandmother was right. The best stories are the ones where everyone gets to be the hero. Today, the entire human race got that opportunity." As the stars wheeled around them carrying the Raven Star toward a future that no one had written in advance, Elira felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood. The electric anticipation of not knowing what would happen next combined with the absolute certainty that whatever it was, it would be worth experiencing. Behind them, Celluloid Prime continued its transformation, becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. A collaborative space where different species could experiment with storytelling without anyone editing their experiments. And ahead of them, Earth waited full of 7 billion people who had just discovered that the galaxy was bigger and stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined, and that they were finally free to explore it on their own terms. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Because the best stories, as any human will tell you, are the ones that never really end. They just turn into new stories told by the same voices, but in different circumstances, with different challenges and different possibilities. And if you've made it this far into our story, if you've stayed with us through mystery and revelation, through conflict and resolution, then you know something important about the power of narrative to transform not just individuals, but entire civilizations. So here's what comes next. This story continues in your imagination, in the conversations you have about what you've heard, in the questions you ask about your own agency, your own choices, your own right to write your own ending. Subscribe to that conversation, comment on it, share it with others who might need to hear it, because the best stories are the ones that inspire more stories, and the best endings are the ones that become new beginnings. The universe is vast and full of wonders. But the most wonderful thing about it is that we get to choose how we respond to those wonders. Choose well. Choose authentically. Choose like the hero of your own story, because that's exactly what you are.